coder, programmer, software developer, software engineer. What's the difference between all these titles? Let me try to explain what I think each of them mean. First, let's talk about the ideal theoretical definition of each title. Conceptually, I see each of these titles as a set of 3 tiers, each one building on the last. And at the first tier is the coder or the programmer. I think these terms are used interchangeably generally, so whenever I refer to coder, I'm also referring to a programmer. A coder is simply someone that's able to write code. That definition could range from a hobbyist that occasionally plays with Python or JavaScript, or someone that occasionally writes automation scripts as part of their job. And it can go all the way to someone that actually works 40 hours a week writing code professionally. If coding is your source of income, then being a coder means you have the basic skills in a programming language to get the job done. At this tier, you're given fully spec'd out tasks with a full description of what needs to get implemented, and you're expected to complete those tasks, translating the spec into actual functioning code. The next tier up is the software developer. A software dev starts with the same basic skills as a coder, but it comes with increased responsibilities and you need to uplevel your skills. You're no longer taking someone else's specification and translating that directly into code. Instead, you're given a problem, and then you're expected to write software that solves that problem. The actual details of the implementation, they're going to be more up to you. You're going to have more leeway in picking a framework, choosing libraries, deciding what algorithms and data structures to use, and many other features of the final product. Now, you'll most likely own individual features, projects, and applications as well, seeing those through from conception and then maintaining them once they're actually live in production. Moving up to the final tier, you have the software engineer. Again, in our ideal definitions, a software engineer includes everything I talked about in the software developer, but a software engineer also has training and education in the engineering process. That engineering training adds rigor to the development process. It's using a proven rational approach to solving problems, and that approach is applied to actually writing the code, designing the application and its components, how the applications interact across components, teams, and companies, any other aspect of delivering the solution. An engineer also learns system for resource management of the software development lifecycle, like Agile or Scrum. And an engineer is probably also knowledgeable in release cycle concepts like CI/CD, Cloud Native, and other release management stuff. One other point about software engineers, in some parts of the world, there's actually strict requirements on having the word engineer in your title. For instance, in Canada, you're not legally allowed to call yourself an engineer unless you're actively licensed by the region to be a professional engineer. But I'm in the US, and here we don't have those same restrictions. So that's how I've always categorized these different titles in my head, but in the real world, the lines are really, really blurry. The lines are especially blurred between an engineer and a developer. As a developer, you're probably still going to be learning Agile or whatever project management methodology your team is using because your team's actually using that. And you're also going to be exposed to all the different release cycle concepts. So if you want to learn that stuff, it's pretty easy to learn it as you go. And with enough experience, you've probably figured out many good practices for solving problems that helps you create better solutions, similar to a formal engineering process. So is the only difference between an engineer and a developer the fact that an engineer has an engineering degree? Well, if you're going by these strict definitions I gave earlier, then basically yes. But after years of experience, does that original training even matter anymore? I would say probably not. I'd much rather work with an experienced dev that's always looking for ways to improve themselves and add more skills, rather than someone that relies on a degree they learned years ago to give them respect. But it's also blurry between coders and other tiers as well, because some domains require a lot of creative problem solving, even when you're given the fully spec'd out task to work on. Like, if you're in embedded systems or working on firmware code, you have a lot of hardware constraints. You need to fit your solution into a small amount of disk space, has to use a very small amount of memory. It might be CPU bound. If you're trying to use any type of network communication, there might be some severe bandwidth limitations. Getting everything working together and working right is very challenging. So, if you're a deep expert on that technology, are you a coder? Are you a developer? Are you an engineer? Honestly, I don't really know. Like I said, the lines are pretty blurry. Further complicating these differences and the definitions is the fact that job boards and companies hiring developers often use the term software engineer to attract talent of all levels. Even many of the software developer jobs that are listed are likely to have the term software engineer somewhere in the description of the job. And even the software engineer titles often don't require any degree. So as long as you have the relevant experience in the field, they still want you to apply. And finally, even if your title is currently software engineer, sometimes it's just easier to say you're a programmer. Like for me, I'm actually a software engineer. I have a degree in computer engineering. I've been writing code for 20 years. I've led projects and teams and have a long history in the industry. But when someone asks what I do, and I suspect that they're not actually in tech, I just say I'm a programmer because I know they'll instantly understand, oh, computer stuff. And I don't have to try to explain what a software engineer does. So, in a way, all these titles are kind of meaningless nowadays because you can't rely on them to tell how a person was trained or what their skill set actually is. But I think these definitions still have value because you can use them as a mental framework to understand how others work and how you like to work. Do you just want someone to give you fully defined tasks and you can then write code? Then it doesn't matter how many degrees you have. You're effectively a coder or a programmer. Do you like taking problems and figuring out ways to solve them and then implement those solutions in code? Maybe you're a software developer. Or perhaps you like zooming out to the high-level design of an application and then switching back to coding and then working out the details of the release cycle and figuring out the best way to integrate with a new database. Well, you have the mindset of a software engineer in that case. At the end of the day, what really matters is your attitude towards the work you're doing and what you actually like doing. None of these roles are intrinsically better than the other. If you love writing code without having to worry about planning and high-level design, then you're going to be a lot happier as a coder than trying to force yourself to fit into the role of a software engineer, where a lot of your time is going to be spent planning and problem solving. Conversely, if you love all the high-level planning and problem solving, you're not going to be fulfilled with just writing code for 8 hours a day every single day. So you should look for ways to grow yourself and your skills, hopefully at your current job, or if necessary, finding a new one where that's a better fit. And remember, this is all just my opinion, so I might be wrong. Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you like this video, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.